heritage. And Mark's mother, Jo Lyons Peisch, and husband Arch, always seemed to keep a very close connection with their Dakota roots. And I was very happy with my wife and my mother joined us on occasion, and Aunt Mary. We went up to visit Joe in Vermont on 3 occasions and had grand times and grand visits, and my Uncle Bob had gone up also. Well, my brother Frank Lyons from Rock Island, who is here, has always had an active interest in the family history, and it was he who first constructed the entire Lyons family tree. And I want to be sure, if you have not yet approached it, you are supposed to sign your name if your name is on there. And if your name is not on there, would you draw in a line to your ancestors and write your name. And we're going to store this in Pat's corn crib or the back room at the farm. And we will pull it out again at the next reunion, whenever that is. But Frank did organize our last reunion 5 years ago. But in our quest for our roots, neither Frank nor I want to dwell only on the past. For a man who thinks too much about his ancestors is like a potato. The best part of him is underground. After a long career with the John Deere Company, Frank has followed the advice of Senator Russell Long's Uncle Earl, who said, "I think you should retire when there still is a little snap left in the garter." And Frank has quite a lot of snap left in his garter, and he's established his own business with the curious name of Emerald Associates. And he's now into the next chapter of his life, and I may follow his example any day now. Frank?
Thank you, Bob. Good afternoon, descendants of the ancient Celtic people who started coming to Ireland in the 5th and 6th century after a very long migration, probably from India. Your genes have been much watered down since that time by the involuntary visits of the Danes, the British, the Spaniards, and so forth, and also later by the voluntary combinations since 1840, when Jeremiah Lyons and Ellen Whelan came to on the great migration across the Atlantic Ocean. You are and will be hearing the lighter side of our nationality from others today, and that is as it should be on such an auspicious occasion as this. There's another side that sometimes shows up in the character of the Irish people, and certainly is frequently covered in the brilliant and prodigious writings of Irish authors. That is a brooding and infinite recognition of fate, and that fate may not always deal us the hand that we wish it would. It is perhaps due to the mystical nature of the Celts and the brutalities inflicted on them over a very long period of time. A little verse exemplifies this. The hills of Ireland, which while in their sleep brood of things eternal. I will say it one more time. The hills of Ireland, while in their sleep, brood of things eternal. I think sometimes that this verse may describe the people too. Lecky, in his 18th century history, said, "No people have undergone greater persecution, nor did that persecution cease up to our day. No people hate as we do, in whom the past is always alive. There are moments when hatred poisons my life, and I accuse myself of effeminacy because I have not given it adequate expression. This is Irish hatred and solitude, the hatred of human life, the hatred that can still make us wag between the extremes and doubt our sanity." William Butler Yeats, one of Ireland's great writers, wrote enigmatically his own epitaph. He said, "Cast a cold eye on life, on death, horsemen passed by." Cast a cold eye on life, on death, horsemen passed by. They had little to defend themselves with but words, which developed into a behavioral pattern that drove their occupiers to despair. The occupying governor of Belfast said, "They are a turbulent and disorderly people who no king can govern and no God can please." Disraeli, the great British Prime Minister, said, "They are an imaginative race, often accompanied by some illogical logic. By the time the question is resolved, the question often changes." Asquith, another Prime Minister, stated, "You will never get to the bottom of this perplexing and damnable country." Perhaps this ancient history and complexity contributes to the continued turbulence and violence to this day as the still unassimilated province of Ulster or Northern Ireland exists. To return to a lighter note established by our MC today, verbal brevity and abstinence should never be practiced to excess. This advice, I'm sure, will be heeded today. And if our MC will return, we will resume the lighter side.
One of the nice things about being the organizer, there are no rules for me to follow, and I can freely seek out, and we're going to have a fantastic phone bill, but is to meet new relatives. And Henry Lyons of Gainesville, Florida, is joining us today, and we'll stand up here in a moment. And when I first talked to Henry on the phone and before we met, I said I was so happy to meet a Lyons with the name of Henry, that he was not named Tom, Dick, or Will. And he rapidly disabused me of that. I don't know if he would tell this, but I shall presume he would allow me to tell this. That in fact, on his baptismal certificate, it says Richard Henry Lyons. But that his mother, who was a nurse, of course I should say, you may know, Henry's father was Dick Lyons Jr., and his mother said, "We don't need two Dicks in this household." Henry joins us today with his wife, Peg, and also his daughter, Susie, we'll hear from later. And Henry, please come forward, and you can give us a capsule summary of the decades. You did give permission to tell them.
Well, that's not the only mistake he made when he called me on the phone. He made another mistake today, too. We're not all purebred Irish. I'm only 75%. Another 25% is Belgian, because my dad married Gertrude Bingham, and from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and her father was Henry Bingham, who was the first licensed undertaker in Sioux Falls, and then with South Dakota at that time. I have to apologize for not knowing more about the Lyons side of the family. I think I owe you an explanation why I don't. Some of you who live near here are very familiar with my father, who spent 30 years in the Yankton State Hospital. And about 18 months after I was born, he was confined to the state hospital and remained there the rest of his life. My mother was a little furious at R.F. Sr. because he had not warned my mother that her husband was ill, and he knew it before they were married. So I did not have too much to do with the Lyons side of the family because of this. But I'm very happy to see that you're all alive and well. And I certainly do enjoy being here. I went to St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota, grew up in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Moved to Georgetown, or to Washington, D.C. to attend Georgetown University Med School. Came back to the Mayo Clinic, and Peg and I were married in Rochester, Minnesota in July of '50. After the Mayo Clinic, I'm to Georgetown and was on the faculty for several years, and then went down to Gainesville, Florida, and was on the faculty at the University of Florida for a good many years before retiring. I am totally retired at the present time and most happy to be retired. I heard a rumor somewhere along the line, among the many stories I've heard about the various Lionses, that R.F. Lyons Sr., Bob can correct me on this if he would like, was one of the instigators of founding the Democratic Party in South Dakota. Is that true? Thank you very much. He was also, I think, chairman of the Statehood Commission at the time South Dakota applied for statehood. Is that true too? And apparently, despite the fact that he was a somewhat hard-headed old buzzard, he did a fair amount of good in this world. My mother said he wore out 2 wives in the process. I also heard a rumor that as part of his campaign to found the Democratic Party, he used to get into fistfights with the bishop in Sioux Falls, and the bishop would flatten him whenever this occurred. Did you? Don't you? I don't know. But apparently you had to be a rough bishop in order to survive in South Dakota in those years.
Still true.
Is it? Okay.
My brother can tell.
Okay. I've got 5 kids who are all grown and well, and Susie is here, and you'll hear from Susie later. Thank you.